The United Kingdom, Canada and Australia formally recognized a Palestinian state on Sept. 21, marking a major policy shift that puts them at odds with President Donald Trump and aligning them with a growing number of countries pressing for a two-state solution. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced the decision after months of signaling that recognition would come if Israel failed to agree to a ceasefire with Hamas in Gaza, a step that has not materialized. Starmer said recognition was necessary to revive the hope of peace for both Palestinians and Israelis, calling it an essential step toward achieving a two-state solution. In Canberra, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese echoed the sentiment, describing recognition as part of a coordinated international effort to build momentum for peace, tied to calls for a ceasefire in Gaza and the release of hostages. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney also issued a statement, noting that the recognition may not resolve the conflict immediately, but represents Canada's commitment to principles of self-determination and fundamental human rights enshrined in the United Nations Charter. Israel denounced the coordinated move, calling it a reward for terror, and urged allies to stand firm against what it sees as efforts to legitimize Hamas in the wake of the October 7 attacks. Trump has maintained his opposition, arguing in July during a trip to Scotland that the immediate priority in Gaza is addressing food shortages and humanitarian needs, not political recognition. Vice President JD Vance, speaking in Britain in August, dismissed the impact of recognition given what he described as the lack of a functional Palestinian government. Although the issue briefly surfaced during Trump's recent state visit to the UK, he played down the disagreement with Starmer, calling it one of the few differences between them. The recognition comes as France and Saudi Arabia prepare to host a United Nations conference on Palestinian statehood, underscoring renewed international attention on the stalled peace process. Palestinian statehood has already been recognized by 147 of the UN's 193 member states. The territories claimed by Palestinians include the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza, areas long at the center of the conflict. French President Emmanuel Macron reaffirmed in July that recognition must be paired with urgent humanitarian measures, emphasizing the need for an immediate ceasefire, the release of hostages, and significant aid for Gaza's civilian population. Legal experts note the debate over whether Palestine meets the conditions for statehood remains unresolved. Under international law, a state generally requires a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and independence. While many countries argue that these conditions are met in Palestine's case, the United States has consistently held that recognition should follow direct negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians. The latest moves by London, Ottawa, and Canberra are likely to intensify pressure on Washington as the issue takes center stage at the UN General Assembly.